He's an analyst, a human rights and interfaith activist. He's the director of the Institute for Leadership and Community Development in the UK, and the UK Honorary Fellow at the Edward Cadbury Centre. He has a PhD in International Relations from the University of Gloucestershire and has testified as an expert witness in front of the United States Congress. He holds a position on the United Nations Advisory Committee on the Prevention of Genocide and Atrocity Crimes. I'm honoured to call Dr.Iqtidar Cheema to the stage.
Senators, let's share the hymn and the prayer of someone whose father was a martyr for human rights and whose sons are martyred, standing for religious freedom, human rights, interfaith. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa. Senators, I'm really impressed of what I've heard from you. I speak on the UN platforms, I speak often at the US Congress, but I have never seen the courage which I have seen in you. Thank you very much for that. For standing with this community who is a stateless nation, who have been oppressed and have been voiceless for 40 years. And especially in this time and age of transnational aggression, whom we may call foreign intervention. Thank you for standing by this community. I stand here on this podium. I make a lot of speeches. But today I stand here as someone who has witnessed this genocide. Your minister has given her age, I want to give it to you. I was born in 1980, so people would say you was just 4 years old when this genocide was committed. How have you witnessed it? My dear fellow, I want to tell you it was 1984 when it was started. It did not end in 1984. I'm talking about 1995. When I was 15 years old, my family used to live in Lahore, which is a neighboring city of Indian Punjab. And those days during the monsoon season, they used to come the floods in the river Ravi. And with these eyes I have seen many of the young Sikh youths tortured and dumped ceremoniously in the river Ravi. And the floods not only brought water from India, but the dead bodies of the tortured Sikh youth. Nobody was there to cremate them. I have never seen such an atrocity against humanity, which I have seen in my life. And I will never forget that, and that stays with me. That's the trauma of my life. Hence, despite being a Muslim who was born on the other side of the border, I have this passion to work, to advocate, and talk about systems. So this narrative should change that it was 1984. It started in 1984. This was a long, decade-long genocide, which still continues in the shape of transnational oppression, in the assassination of those who advocate for the Sikh rights. I will go to my presentation. So, I will try to map what is genocide and how, by looking at the UN conventions, we map the Sikh genocide. So, genocide, as many of you would know, was coined by Raphael Benjamin in the days of Holocaust, which is from two words, genocide and side, race and killing. Killing of a race is called genocide. Now, I have tried to tell people Sikhs are not only a religion, but they are a race too, because most of you come from Punjab, so you share the race as well. Now, when we look at the UN Conventions about the genocide and prevention of it, the Article 2 of the UN Convention clarifies what is a genocide. So it says genocide is any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group as such by killing members of the group, causing seriously bodily harms, inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about physical destruction, imposing male intended to prevent birth within that group, or forcibly transforming children of a group to another group. Now, looking at this definition of genocide, this is the textbook definition of the Sikh genocide. Many people have been misphrasing it. People have been saying this was rioting. Somebody was saying this was violence against Sikh. Even my first presentation, which I really applaud, was a wonderful effort, says anti-Sikh violence. When we look at international context and in the context of genocide, every word has different meaning. Every word you associate with this have different implications when it comes to foreign policy or holding people accountable. In the international structures, we have atrocity crimes, we have crimes against humanity, and we have genocide. But looking at these conventions, very simple definition of genocide, it was indeed genocide. And every Sikh in the world should refer it as genocide, not as program, not as anti-Sikh rioting or anti-Sikh program. Now, sometimes people attribute this to the killing of Indira Gandhi. For the young people also, and everyone sitting in the hall, please note, anything which happens all of a sudden to an event could be anything but not a genocide. If what happened with the Sikh was just something related to death of a prime minister of a country, then it's not genocide. It's just what the party opposite is saying. Because when you're going to talk to these parliamentarians, when you're going to take it to the UN, they're going to ask you, if it was genocide and was a result of a death of a person, then it wasn't a genocide, because genocide has different stages. And the genocide will have to be planned well in advance. So, my next slide is actually on these 8 stages of genocide as we study in the genocide studies. So, what are these stages? These are classification, symbolization, dehumanization, organization, polarization, preparation, extermination, and denial. So these 8 stages are what constitute a genocide. So whenever you talk about it, take this stance out that if Indra wasn't dead, Sikh genocide was well planned, and we all know that. And mapping these, first thing is classification, us against them, and distinguished by nationality, ethnicity, race, or religion. So, older generation will know when it comes to classification. Can anybody tell me what India classified Sikhs as after 1947? No. A tribe of criminals. A notification was issued soon after transfer of power in India in 1947, which says the Sikhs will be classified as tribe of criminals. So when we come to the first stage of classification to commit genocide, India classified you as tribe of criminals by putting you against the rest of the India and rest of the nations living in state of India. Then it comes to civilization about names, languages, style, dress, uniform, ID card, and everything else. So older generation would know when it was an issue of language. One language, one states were created, but Punjabi Suba wasn't created because language were created. And then this organization, when one group denies the humanity of another group, hate propaganda, dehumanization process. So all that what Indian media did at the commencement of this genocide, after or during those 10 years, by writing about the Sikhs that they are separatists, they are terrorists, they want a Sikh state, they are anti-national. This is all what was denying the humanity of the group. The Anandpur Sahib resolution was all about the constitutional right of the Sikhs, but it was represented to the rest of the Indian population that Sikhs are separatists. Sikhs want a separate state. It wasn't the case. Even Sanjhe, who is our national hero, he never said that he wanted a Pakistan straight away. He said the day the Indian army put its footstep in the Gaza, on that day, the foundation of Palestine would be set. Another thing what you need to understand is genocide is not an individual's act. It is a group crime. So there are other crimes and there are group crimes. So genocide has to be a group crime. So looking at this definition of group crime, the way the mobs attacked Sikhs, the way the Hindu mobs used the transport, the way the Hindu mobs had access to the lists and everything else for the Sikhs. So that was a group crime. It wasn't an individual's crime. Hence this stage of organizing it is there. I hope I'm not boring you. This is not usually how I speak in my presentations. This is a very technical stuff. But for you to digest this technical stuff is very important. Especially for the younger generation. Because when you're going to speak to other people and going to call it genocide, you should have a context. And if you don't have a context and you appear before a UN or a parliament and you don't know what you're talking about, people are not going to buy into our emotional narrative. People are not going to buy into it what we say, that's not what buys into. So, sorry if it is a bit boring my presentation today, but you need to understand all of this. And again, then the polarization, preparation, and extermination. I will skip these three parts because the young lady before me has very well elaborated it. Now, we go to the next stage, which is denial. So, Government of India, as we know, has been denying it, and everybody who commit atrocity crimes always deny it. First, they deny the evidence. We have clearly seen that Government of India and all its agents, this genocide was being committed, and especially the attack on the Gaza in 1984. The state of Punjab was completely blocked. No journalists were allowed. No one was allowed to gather the evidence, and that was all because they want to deny the evidence. Even the way the people were not cremated, and one of the examples I have given, that a lot of Sikh youth who was extrajudicially killed was dumped into the water, in the rivers and in the canals, and was not cremated. So that was to really deny the evidence. And as you all know, Sardar Singh Vichar, he discovered those mass cremation sites. He talked about those disappeared dead bodies, and then he disappeared. But my dear young fellows, after Sardar disappeared, no other Sikh has disappeared. So we should remember those Sikhs who have given their life to collect and gather that evidence. And then obviously attack on the truth tellers. That is also part of denial of genocide. This is what Government of India is consistently doing. It is attacking all truth tellers, including myself. And what we have recently seen transnational repression, where you have Vichar being martyred in Canada, Paramveer Singh were martyred in Lahore, and threats to other people who talk about the truth. So all that is attacking them. And then, one thing which you need to note, the perpetrator of violence will always like to forget it. They will say, oh, it was 40 years ago. Let's forget, let's move on, let's reconcile. Reconciliation without justice is nothing. You can only reconcile if justice is served. And one of the problems with the perpetrator of violence is that they try to convince you, this matter was 40 years ago, just forget about it, let's move on. But for the Sikhs, it's not a matter to move on. Because it's not only the Sikh genocide which happened on this earth, someone else's genocide happened as well. And you know what they have adopted? Never again. So Sikhs have to fight for justice. Sikhs have to take this approach that will hold the perpetrator of violence to accountability. Now, again I have some graphics which might be very, very challenging for some of you, so discretion of the audience is requested. So this is how Sikh genocide looks like. This is how people were burned alive. This is how the dead body was scattered. And that's a Calcutta site in June 1984. And you can see people being burned alive. Women were raped, people were burned alive. And when we talk about the Wild West, and when we talk about Australia, you know what they used to do? When they were committing the genocide of the local natives here, they used to take the skull. Same thing happened in 1984 at the streets of Delhi. They were skulled. Their hairs were taken, and their scent was compromised. Now, there is a recognition of the Sikh genocide as well. So this is the part for the members of this house to consider. So for the last 10 years, in collaboration with the American Sikh Caucus, we have been working with the state assemblies and the US Congress to get the Sikh genocide recognized. So this is one of the resolutions text, because now we have state of California, state of Texas, state of Pennsylvania. They have passed the resolutions to recognize the Sikh genocide. And I'm very delighted to share that 2 weeks ago, Congressman David Belladale, who is a friend of mine, and Congressman Jim Costa, whom I worked over the years, they have introduced a resolution at the US House of Representatives, which is US Congress, to recognize the Sikh genocide. It was a long, tiring journey of 10 years, and it matters a lot that at the 40th commemoration of the Sikh genocide, that has been introduced in the US Parliament. May I request all of you, Australian Sikhs, that you should contact your member parliament, your senators, your members, and ask them you want a similar resolution to come in the Australian Parliament to recognize the Sikh genocide. This is the first stage towards our right to self-determination. And this genocide, as I said, hasn't stopped. Now, this is the new shape of this genocide, where you have what the Americans call transnational repression, which Australians and UK people may say it's foreign intervention. So transnational repression is the new shape of these atrocity crimes, where I have already said that Vichar has been marketed in Canada, Paramjit Singh Panjwar was marketed in Pakistan. There are threats to life as well elsewhere. So transnational repression also what you need to understand is not only the assassination attempts. Transnational repression is not only plotting to kill somebody, it's more than that. Earlier this year I joined on the expert committee of the Freedom House, which is one of the greatest think tanks in the US. We are consistently trying for the policymaker to understand that transnational repression is also harassment, hacking, physical assaults, and attempted kidnapping, forcing or coercing victims to return to the home countries, detaining family members in the home country, freezing financial assets, online misinformation campaigns. So, these words, everything I'm speaking about is happening to the Sikhs. Somebody want to go back to India to meet their parents or see their family, their visas are denied. People have some property in India, they are at the threat that this will be seized. And a lot of misinformation. Only a few years ago at the UN, an NGO presented us a case where India was running these fake media websites who were spreading hate against Sikhs, minority communities, and these were all fake media organizations. And as I already talked about by its signature and Paramjit Singh Panjwar. And as we have recently found out as well that Indian authorities have used spyware and online harassment campaigns. And as I told you, the Brussels-based NGO has told that there was a 15-year-old operation of Government of India of these campaigns of defaming people. So these are some of my recommendations for Australia, specifically the Parliament. As I already said, the Parliament of Australia should recognize Sikh genocide 1984 to 1995. I'm not curtailing it to 1984. It started in 1984 and it lasted for a decade. Australia should put religious freedom and human rights at the heart of all trade, aid and diplomatic interactions with India. Australia should pass legislation to address gaps in responses to transnational repression, or if you want to say in Australian way, thought intervention. This includes codifying a definition of transnational repression, ensuring government officials who may encounter perpetrator or victims of transnational repression receive the training necessary to recognize and respond to the problem, and strengthening sanctions authorities to make it easier to hold perpetrators to accountability. Australia should effectively deal with transnational repression, and lobbying for the states which violate human rights and religious freedom should be made unlawful. This is a very important point. There are so many organizations which work with these repressive regimes. We need to look into those. And the group that raised funds for Australians from Australian citizens and support the hate campaigns abroad should be banned from operating in Australia. I assume there are so many Iqtibar organizations in US, in Canada, in the UK. Australia must have those Iqtibar organizations here too, which raises funds. They have very nice mainstream names, but what they do, they raise funds under those nice names and send that money to India to persecute the Sikhs and other religious minority communities. Such an attitude is not acceptable in any safe country. So Australia should watch all these organizations and ban them. And thank you all.
For all types of criminal law, family law, immigration law, conveyancing, and employment matters, please contact Tarandeep Singh on 0470 412 600.